We have sorted out the conflictogens from the position of an adult, from the position of a child, and now we're moving on to a new topic. If you understand it, your life will change dramatically because your behavior will become attractive and very beautiful. You will then understand how it is to respect another person, but at the same time to respect yourself. What are boundaries? How not to violate other people's boundaries, but not to lose your own. So, the boundaries of self or personal boundaries have been studied by many outstanding world-famous psychologists. Sometimes they talk about stepping on the borders. So we imagine that conflictogens from the position of a parent are a rough attack on the border, on the circle of another person. And from the child's perspective, this is also an attack, but an innocent one, and yet offensive and pushing away. The person has put his foot on your circle, but at the same time, he behaves like a child. He pretends he thinks he pleased you with that. You see, conflict triggers can be your own, which is you putting your foot in someone else's circle. And conflict triggers can be when another person puts his step on your border. If you want to learn not to push away, but to attract people, to make them fall in love, then an important rule is that you should only correct your conflictogens. Imagine how easy it is, and you just have to react correctly to strangers' ones. That's all. You cannot correct other people's mistakes if the person himself has not turned to you for help in this, as you are now to me. When does another person make you uncomfortable? When he gives you a negative, unsolicited assessment from the position of a parent. Or, from the position of a child, he bombards you with unnecessary compliments, flatters you, believing that you will believe it, this flattery. Further, imposing unsolicited advice on you from the position of a parent. Or from the position of a child. He asks you for endless, stupid advices and encroaches on your time. A person puts his foot on your boundaries when he tells you what to do, what you should do from the position of a parent. Or from the position of a child, he hints, whines that he wants you to cook. I want you to prepare the first, second, third dessert, but this is how he does it, by hint. Let's take a closer look here, because you really owe something to a person when you owe it by law, by contract, by conscience. You owe it to your minor children. You owe it to your elderly parents. You owe it to your husband to cook and clean if he provides you financially. In good conscience, you must pay back the money if you borrowed it. You must help the one who helped you. You owe it to yourself to grow self-esteem, to develop stronger relationships with other people, to give all these people warmth and help them, but not at the expense of your life. Does not correspond to age. He looks in a way that is unpleasant for you. Let's also take a closer look here, because people often say that the way they want is the way they look. Let's, in order to experience this conflict, let's, as always, exaggerate with an example. Let's imagine that a 90-year-old man in a thong is walking down the street. Let's even ignore the fact that this is a violation of public order. What we need you to do now is ask yourself how this makes you feel. Let's say he believes that he decides what to wear, but his appearance causes unpleasant feelings among all passersby on the street, which means it is a rude attack on the border of all these people who walk nearby because they have to see it and they are not pleased. There are norms in our society. Perhaps in 10 years, the norms will change, and it will become common to walk like this man. But then it would not shock anyone. But today it shocks. And today, it is unpleasant. So, any violation of standards in society is repulsive. And as you and I remember, notes and hints of conflict, in this case, notes and hints of violating social standards, are a little repulsive, but this prevents you from falling in love. It prevents you from getting closer to people. We remember that you and I do not correct other people's mistakes. Why did we start with other people's conflictogens? So that you feel that any conflictogen is unpleasant. I hope you felt it now as I listed it. Any conflictogen is negative and repulsive. Now let's take a look at your personal conflictogens, which need to be corrected. These are the ones that need to be removed. Here your foot is on someone else's border, on someone else's circle. This is your negative assessment of another person, condemnation, or giving unnecessary compliments to a person, an excess of positive compliments, your imposition of unsolicited advice or requests for advice, your pressure, instructions, the tyranny of debt, whining, hints that a person owes you something, your planning his life for him. Further, your intrusion into the personal, into his personal life, his personal space, or vice versa, telling your personal intimate stories that are unpleasant to him. Further, your demands for justification, or vice versa, your own justification, taking up his time, your taillessness, your self-deprecation, ridicule of others and ridicule of yourself, inconsistency with age, society norms. All these are conflictogens. If you cannot build a relationship or are in an unpleasant relationship, then most likely you have now discovered that you communicate only with conflict generators. I know that often when people learn about all these conflictogens, the question arises in their heads, what then should we communicate with a person about? Even now, I don't know what to say, but you remember that all conflictogens are negative and make a person feel unpleasant. They all come from disrespect for him and disrespect for himself. So in this case, ask yourself a counter question. Am I anything but disgusting? I can't tell people anything. Can't I just have a warm and kind conversation? What to do with all the conflictogens to make you fall in love? Replace them with warmth, give more smiles, more sparkling eyes, joy, good mood, warmly, but not enough, for a short time. What is warmth? Warmth is joy. It is to rejoice at a man as if he is the dearest, closest person to you, and you missed him for 10 years, and finally saw him, and so with every person. But do not confuse warmth with humiliation of yourself. Humiliation is when you sacrifice your own affairs. Adjust. This is not warmth. This is the behavior of a self-disrespecting rag. Then, do not confuse warmth and intrusiveness, please. You cannot forcefully give warmth. You cannot tie a person and give him warmth. Unfortunately, that's how it is. Not a single warm person was blocked. Obsessive ones are blocked constantly, every day. A person who respects his own and others' boundaries commands respect from other people. Respect for you disappears when you do not honor. Do not respect either your own or other people's boundaries. Respect disappears not because the other person is bad, behaves incorrectly. No, but precisely from your reactions, from your correct reactions to his behavior. How to react correctly to other people's conflicts is an interesting topic. If a person steps on your borders with no bad intent, then don't even pay attention to this. Why? For example, gives advice, gives an unsolicited rating, asks personal things, or plans something for you. A person may not do this out of bad, but with the goal of helping you. It's just that he, like you, may not have realized before that this will now make you feel unpleasant. A person can also boast and self-deprecate, make excuses due to a lack of understanding that this is unpleasant for you. But pay attention, explaining to you what you should love, care, and so on, or giving you advice without you asking. These are more brutal attacks on the border. So what to do? How to behave correctly so that people begin to be attracted. Don't notice unintentional, easy conflict triggers. Otherwise, you will be considered a dog who barks. Don't notice them or take them for a joke, change the topic, and communicate further. Because if now, after this, after your new knowledge, you start looking for ideal people without mistakes, you don't need to live in this world at all. Everyone here is ordinary. Everyone can make a mistake. It's not gods who live here. People make mistakes. That's normal. So the most powerful thing is not to react to a conflictogen, not to notice it. Self-respecting people do not bark at every turn. Do not prove. Do not re-educate anyone. So who does it? Grannies on the bench, those who have nothing to do, those who do not respect either themselves or the position of another person. But if the conflict agent carries an offensive message, stop communicating. If someone too rudely put his dirty shoe on your territory, on your circle, gave you an offensive assessment, interferes with your personal, tries to manage and lead you, joked offensively at you, then you have nothing more to discuss with this person. If you respond to a person's conflictogen with your own conflictogen, aggression, then it turns out that there is a scandal, a war. People often ask me, but can I calmly explain to a person that he is wrong? No, you can't. This is a conflict. Because where does he ask you to explain to him? Where does he tell you, please explain to me? Does he consider you an authority in this case? Let us remember that conflictogen means that I believe that I am smarter than you. Conflict from the position of a child means I will pretend to be stupid, as if you are smarter than me. Why then do they say that you need to talk to a person and explain everything to him? They ask me? Yes. They say that you need to behave this way in a good relationship, with mutual love, where the second partner is open to you, and not where he slammed the door, where he doesn't want to know your opinion. Imagine a situation. Your neighbor, who is uninteresting to you in love, our beloved neighbor, decides to explain to you that you love him the wrong way. You are hiding from him. You are not going to love him. And he comes to visit you and say, I thought, and I concluded, that you love me the wrong way. So what will happen to your feelings? After all, we need to fall in love. Your feelings from his conflictogen will grow, or his chances will become even less. Of course, less. You can only explain within open boundaries, and then it will not repel you if your boundaries are open to him. What does it mean to have open borders? This means he himself asks you to explain. He himself asks you to give an assessment. He himself asks you to criticize. He asks you to help plan his day off. He asks you to give advice, and so on. That is, in this case with your neighbor, you yourself ask him to tell you, explain how to love him correctly, and not he runs after you and forcibly conveys this to you. Strong and wise people do not re-educate others, because everyone has the right to live the way they want. And if you suddenly, like your neighbor, think that you know better, then the emerging conflict is that you will never learn to be pleasant, attractive, or make people fall in love with you with such an attitude. They also asked me this question. If people are not gods and others need to forgive mild conflict generators, then why can't I allow at least a little conflictogens in my communication? Well, you can, but be ready that other people may lose the desire to communicate with you, even after a slight, tiny conflictogen. Do you want to make others fall in love, or is your goal to continue communicating the way you communicate? If you want the first, if you want to learn how to attract, remove all repulsive moments. So, how does an adult communicate? From the position of a parent, we sorted out the conflictogens. From the position of a child, we sorted it out. And we remember that it is from the position of an adult that you can make others fall in love. You can begin to attract and build mutual love. Adults, communicate with respect for themselves and with respect for their partner.